Can you hear me back there with that mic? Yes? Okay. Welcome. This is the first event of the 2014 Writer Series. I'm really pleased to see such a great crowd. I'm Sue Hurst. I'm the new director of the Writer Series, taking the mantle from Ann Williams, who held it for many years. We're really pleased tonight to have David Blair, a renowned poet. We are very fortunate to have him teaching with us this semester. But before we get to David, I just want to get a couple of things straight. First of all, that outside the doors here, David will be signing books after the meeting, which will conclude at 6. And also to tell you about some of the other writers who we have coming up this fall and this spring. In October, late October, October 22nd, we have Katie Butler, who is a nonfiction writer and the author of the memoir Knocking on Heaven's Door. She's won all sorts of awards for her magazine work and essays. On Thursday, November 20th, we will have fiction writer Tom McNeely, who we are also fortunate to have him teaching with us this semester. Tom is a Stigner Fellow, and his first book is coming out, it's your first book, right? Coming out this spring. And then jumping to the spring, we have Nicholson Baker, who needs no introduction, on Thursday, February 12th. And Nicholson Baker writes everything, so we can't categorize him. We have poet Jean Valentine in March, and Jed Coffin, memoirist, coming up in April. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Jace Russell, and the big nonfiction student who will introduce David.
Poetry and
Sorry.
It's okay. David Blair's first collection, the 2007 publication Ascension Days, was chosen by Thomas Lux as the recipient of the Del Sol Poetry Prize. His work has appeared in Agni, Fence, the Harvard Review, Ploughshares, Slate, Story South, and, among others, the University of New Hampshire's own Barnstorm. He currently works as both an associate professor at the New England Institute of the Arts and as visiting professor in the UNH Poetry Program. In a 2009 interview, David Blair referred to the work, or select poems, of William Carlos Williams and Frank O'Hara as being rooted in knowing something about people and being a person. No style can make up for this being absent. Any style can attempt to dissemble in its absence. The wonder is there are so many ways of being expressive. I trust David Blair, and that's essential. He's a poet in the old ways of being a poet, a shaper who crafts worlds parallel to our own, from visions of truths. And, like all good visions of truth, he finds a place more actual and honest than the world our feet and our shirts and our picnic baskets inhabit. He knows there are alternate ways of being, unnamed still within our actual ways of being. Still, he is a poet of the external world. And by that, I mean that I doubt there's a detail of the day that escapes him. In that way, David Blair is a thief. Every drifting mote of the world around him. Don, who throws pizza trays like frisbees. The shoes on Washington Street. The secretive click code of lobsters in paper bags is snatched away, locked inside of him. His poetry leads us down winding hallways whose endless doors populates with these fluorescent bold sensations of the concrete world. Cities in asphalt, Cadillacs on strange highways, all-night train tracks that rattle and creak and groan strains of the Pogues down to bewildered tourists and their bewildered tourist poems. He dares to present us with a world of hidden pleasures and terrestrial salvations. His is a work of such powerful, intuitive energy that there is a sense the book, the man even, will explode if it can't keep moving. David Blair has no problem shifting from the miniature statuaries of gift shops to the beaches where Amy Fisher met Joey Buttafuoco. But, most importantly, we have no problem following him because he makes us experience these worlds. We trust him His running is infectious, with momentum like a 4 a.m. subway ride on the wrong line. Wherever it is we're headed, we are all aboard. Please welcome David Blair.
Thank you, James, for that very generous introduction. And it's wonderful to be here at UNH, which is become one of my favorite places very quickly. There's so many great writers, student writers, faculty, but also there's a lot of really great UNH alumni I've gotten to know over the years as well. Here's one since Election Day is coming up. Election of the Saints. Traveling through the landscape of election signs, did you ask, who is he and who is he and who is he of names held aloft at intersections on fresh pine stakes and yards? When you tell me how your mother ran out of gas on purpose so the two of you would walk along the lavender medians and across the margins of pine along the road, I imagine loving a person in his faults or hers, allowing the car to run out of gas, gladly stop driving and walk. There's another kind of, this is a post-election day poem. Remember Robert Reich was ran for governor of Massachusetts and he didn't get the nomination. We ended up with Romney. Sonnet for Robert Reich. Somebody odd who loved him toted 20 pounds of dried rabbit chow through the subway turnstiles. When election defeats melted into drugstore carpets, headed to scrubbers and sponges, cosmetics, sink stuff, and Mr. Peanut on his cane, tilting his urbane body skull at all the ungovernableness, at former Secretary Reich and his tall wife crossing my path through Cambridge, seeming decent and happy. Somebody small-mouthing an ingenue pear with thin lips made health and life measly, strictly for the rabbits. Put your hands under his arms, man who would be governor, and lift him up in a light that melts stubborn icicles, that creates a special tan, that wedges bits of cotton between toes at the pedicurist, that arranges old womanly hair into tinfoil chicken mix. This poem about the subject of this poem has since become a saint, and I haven't read this poem in public since he became a saint. Easter, good Pope John the 23rd. The black snow is still melting in lots. Easter is large-eared of his waddling and simple principles for an irreligious moment outdoors, not to be a cop, not to punish, to want love for everybody. Such a feeling is immensely practical among rural supplies, a wooden barrel full of dried snouts for the dog to chew. If there is ever a very old woman with enormous breasts, you can bet grandchildren love to get her dark glasses and run down the boardwalk with her wig through the brown olive shine of rosaries. As a Transylvania Pope, a blue Pope Pius green in the apartment light and falling motes, that was not the way for him to proceed. Underground feelings about grandmothers had taken root and thrown up feminine trees, state parks beyond the long Tappan Zee, into which once flew a two-seat airplane at the edges of the fenders, and in the short sleeves and dresses of Memorial Days and Labor Days, along the river parkways, through Westchester, some wildernesses that, never Puritan, are full of pollinated hedonists and easygoing lowlanders, the preferred relations, the jokers. We'll find in those coolers the kind of sandwich we should expect: chicken loaf, pimento bologna, ham salad, the loneliness ending with every crack of an aluminum can in the humidity, and some hard-boiled eggs already peeled for us, already salted, If we were to climb up on the tiled roofs and moss and then pick some of the leaves away in the garden, we would see the first red coils of the peonies in this drift down of the maple flowers, winter still clinging, not much more than dark sap in the shade. So the book has a sequence of kind of called Gerda-bop. They're kind of very somewhat irreverent, free variations on Goethe poems, some of which are partially translated, some of which are rhymed, associatively translated, some of which are just going completely different directions from the poem itself. So here are two of those. Inside jobs. Ach da, die innere Schöpfungskraft. Translated loosely as the innate shop power of things, or Kung Pao, because subculture number 2 involved the priapatic daikon jokes or line cooks in Chinatown, where we smoked cigarettes with Lao Tzu on the label. They tasted like bits of licorice. Sweet man with scars and discoloration of leaping acids from industry in the interior. Nothing more could be taken from you now. The man hung with his yellow tape will soon be assembling child mannequins that have already gone cross-eyed. The innate craftiness. Fabric stores were subculture number 1. There was always an AM radio behind the cash register and carpet stapled to the columns supporting the high ceiling. Everything looked too enduring, 2 steps down from the street that had known flood and fire. In winter, the uncovered pipes sounded like tuning forks. Ping, ping. The keys to the register were worn away at fingertips. You could drink from their small cups. Fans blew bad air from the street. Fashions remained unassembled in white kits, and the yards were all rolled but loose, and the leftover cutaways were spread. Ah, the innate power keeps around my head before it gets into my chest, or it starts in my fingers. One day, I'll stand and listen to spring water run down a hillside, and bees and flies in the eaves of a roadside fruit stand. I'll stand away from the woks and feel the night air travel heaped rice and screens. I used to be a dishwasher in a Chinese restaurant. Pajira furniture. North and west and south are fragmenting. Recliners bursting, empires shuddering. And it's hard to get the footstool back under, so watch out, or one of those flying beams will dent our burly heads. East is clear, spare, and the air of graybeards, those cloud people, coast along, sometimes ringing the peaks, sometimes providing some backdrop. Under spells of love and liquor and singing, you'll quiet down, swig it all down, simplify. What I want is medieval, or even better, glutting, listening, shaping the speech that God gives to crispy roots and broken heads. They used to raise old men on their shoulders, and that strange system ended there, or began, a swooping decline 20 minutes north of St. Augustine. I'm looking for the well with a fat bottom. Picture a beaker set down 20 feet into the earth. I'm looking for words. You can really mix yourself up. Oasis herders, cab drivers, stock car racers, all those languages. Camels jawing away, fat flakes falling on the pie, a trucker with a big plank and spoon of fatouche. I'll be handling musty stuff, shawls, perfumes, drinks. Every path I'll tread from the deserts to the city, up nasty fells, up and down a regular Eric burden. When the mule driver sings Hafiz to the mules, there is a close, creepy relationship among the stars, but I'll hear that again later on when black bits of veil fall down in the stream on curtains and mirrors, out of which come perfume and the autumnal musk. Words try to get into heaven. Shoes are red peppers on the tiles of mosaics in bathrooms and linoleum. A number of years, I'm going to take a sip of water, actually. It's like a little bottle of, no, it's the stuff babies drink. I'm glad this isn't being, oh, it is being videotaped. If you go to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, they have a concert space now, it's kind of not that much bigger than this. And they used to have concerts up on the second floor in this kind of very baronial room. And one time I was walking through there, and there was a violinist and a piano player, or cello player and a violinist, a cello player and a piano player practicing a piece. And I thought it was very beautiful, so I stopped and I listened, and then I realized the composer was sitting in the front row, and after they played through the piece, they asked him a bunch of questions about the notation of the work and how to interpret the work. It was a really beautiful thing to see. And somehow it reminded me of the basically social process involved in being an artist, where you do your work, but your work is really important, connected to your relationships to other people, your domestic life, your friendships with other writers, all those things that give you a reason to write. It's the real reason to write, and sustain you because you become enlarged by the work your friends do. Duo number 2 by Leon Kirshner. Leon Kirshner is happy that his piece for piano and violin is getting a rehearsal in the empty hall. The old lady with him looks happy too. Why do sometimes these old couples withhold the reason for being so glad to see the paperboy? What's happening in that sunroom with wicker furniture? Sometimes a black phone had the proper weight in your hand before you hung up. I've been in rooms where the magazines looked the right way and the rack and the records filled up the wall. The old man in a cardigan says, "Ida, Jeremy, take this drink. There's no danger of sitting too long." The violinist and the piano player play together all the time. Their attention is inspiring. This is the sort of situation that calls up more anxieties. Then we'll get to the sink full of pots. This is where the sand from all the spinach goes. I'm so homed in that I think even base work has found its counterweight. This winter, I won't mind putting on the extra pounds. When you read a friend's poem, he may like what you have to say, but you only almost get it right. All in all, it is a lucky enterprise, apprehending goodness, trying to get it about right. I won't describe music again, or I will always describe it. That line about the sand actually comes from a Bob Hope Bing Crosby movie, The Road to Morocco. I was very happy to steal that. Jace said, I'm a terrible thief. This is a poem set in New Hampshire, Arethusa Savage. The brown Frankenstein cliffs in Crawford Notch State Park look like the color photo of cold mountain china on the cover of the Red Pine translation of Handshed. But the Arethusa Falls are in a savage amphitheater of Canadian bathing suits and a creche of broken trees. There's a couple different landscapes that are constantly coming up in my poems. Like, one is the Jersey Shore, South Jersey, where my family's been my whole life. And another one is Pittsburgh, where I grew up. And then there's a lot of Boston, Somerville, because that's where I work. Poem about heaven. I am such an impressionist. My legs get cold, my arms get cold. Weird thinking of my mom dying in my old bedroom, now the dead. And kneeling is weird. The northern lights, weird. Arcade lights, Wildwood, New Jersey, weird. Inside my eyelids. But I'm not thinking of Poe again and the dance of colors. I'm thinking of the hierarchy that my mind wants heaven to be. Why else these figures from a deck of cards, kings and queens kneeling down to Jesus in the neon shoreline, tunnel of love, of horrors, boardwalk attractions. Only these are blissful religious figures. They kneel because they are weak in the knees. That feeling you get when somebody is wearing a night dress by the freezer section in the supermarket, you will drop through the bunting thrown up on either side of your wraparound porch. I feel in love with a heart that I picture blue and red, pumping an old planetarium light show. I go back downstairs to a house full of the voices of all my family, my whole life. Sure, we're going there. A little poem about the pleasures of having a small kid. Postcard from Midsummer Nights. There's a feathered June Friday night postcard of the evening from the evening. Dear Astrid, dear Sabrina, dear David, enjoy me in your noisy Ford Focus as it whirs over the swamps and lakes between Boston and Hartford. Enjoy the catalpa blooms that fall on the heads of pedestrians. You saw all week the pig and cow side of things, those hot summer days that are really tan lines on man boobs and rural semi-tropic overalls under grapevines and driveways. In ancient Rome, there's too much sauce to cover meat gone bad. Breathe in the wetland flush of state flower bushes. My cabins hide behind the peeling billboards. Love the evening. Last couple of years, I've been trying to push into different directions with my writing. So one of the things I started playing around with is very short forms and also prose poems and kind of hybrid type things that are almost prose poems. Excuse me. I'll spare you that. Doesn't that annoy you when people do that at readings? You listen, God, that's a great Frank Bernard bottle poem, but the adorable couple. In the bar, she shouts back, I'm a music therapist. Small bar, the musicians stand between the customers, and that's from a plunger, that trumpet mute. I work in palliative care. The magnolias are all brown shreds because they bloom too early. I am a hospice physician. What do people want to hear on your guitar? Wise men know. Only fools fall in love. The door opens. Cold air. Soporific. Early spring. Burning cold. I went to a Christian college in Bucks County in Pennsylvania. These two, their bedroom is a flute case, no? I play 4 sets a day. Guitar. Love songs. Hymns for people who are dying. In the middle of the night, it snowed. In the middle of the night, it snowed. There was moisture in the air all winter that never got cold. And in the middle of the air, there was a crossing guard in a fluorescent green coat, double wide. There was a boulder with a turnip on top of it under miles of clouds. There was a tattoo shop in the foggy glow. Seagulls in the parking lot, a whole lot of cotton wadding. If only you would remove your surgical mask, I could see that kisser. My first book is called Ascension Days, so this is a little bit of a sequel to that, Lucy Days. I'm sorry for feigning personhood so many times before I was one. The sun falls on the grass, poking snow, kind of irritating. The directions, also absurd. High-pleated, archaic, fat man pants to make us walk like Fred Mertz until it hurts. I Love Lucy. I know, I just realized as I was reading that maybe 5 people in the room watched lots of I Love Lucy and go, yeah, oh, you don't want to wear Fred Mertz pants, you know. Like, but some of you are like, what? You know, go watch I Love Lucy. It's pretty good. There's these community gardens in Somerville for people, so you can have like a little garden, little plot in the middle of the city, and then there's the community garden in the center, which is beautiful and landscaped, and they do things there, and they have events, and I hardly ever go there. May Day at the Somerville Community Gardening Center. You give them enough sweet curd, some little kids denounce me for witchcraft at Puritan tribunals. Humorless parents anywhere in the cells of their regarding, you don't tangle with them. But here, one too many contemporary Morris dancers tip the scales at the weigh-in station for pre-solstice festivities. Under these beards, our chins are husked. We come up in rows. What happens when one of the brokers goes to the Renaissance fair without blistex? Lives change, contracts, transactions, semen and stamen. The suits shall comb these hairy feet. Downtown is far away. So are all the mower-cropped fields alongside the harbor between refineries and convention centers. We landed in springtime, season of Dante, Purgatorio, Easter, the sun entering the ram, then bull. I was a Morris dancer, but like a vegetable sub, I've grown leaner. The graveyard has its gardeners too, of 19th century granite, softer and goner than slate. Some people have compassion so extensive, you almost always miss it. The town has black Irish lips and high friendly dogs, and asbestos tucked into rhododendrons. My town, Arsonville. It's a poem about the house I grew up in, among other things. Poem about Pittsburgh Houses. I'm from like a kind of a big family, so it's kind of a big house. Poem about Pittsburgh Houses. My parents' house took a beating the winter my mother was gone. Blizzards, ice-busting gutters, the wallpaper stained with runoff. March came, and then it was April. The grass came up green and flaked with thin leaves of slate roof shingles. I'll be going up soon myself, my dad said to me as we were drunk, or at least I was, swaying, delaying, all of us together at home 2 nights before the funeral. Our TV room, where we watched Petticoat Junction. There's Uncle Joe, he's moving kind of slow. At the junction, and other moronic kid reruns, was originally an entranceway, or acted that way, with a curved ceiling. The carriage drop-off at the Pennsylvania Railroad station downtown was a gesture itself when mansions were pulled down as eyesores and 4 more lots between Forbes and Fifth Avenue, with stained glass on top of the airy first floor windows that did not open above windows that opened like doors attached to soft metal levers of a first modernism, of straightening, the books less gilded, the embossed designs set a millimeter less deeply, but still decorative, opening onto green sycamores with intercom wiring buried in the old-time walls up along a laundry chute, and voices still rasped, not by us, from a kitchen room to a maid's bedroom. Houses built for lawyers, for ledgermen, for once gleaming nights of analysis, doctors, engineers. There was a coal room, a cherry tree, potato and chicken every week, and our baked naan moment to be followed by another. How to see the present, how to see the past. It's a beautiful translation of Leah Party's Handy that came out a couple of years ago, which is a really fun book to read, really beautiful. Free variation on Saturday night in the Village. Blinds up on the clarity and social club drinkers of mythos and black coffee and watchers of white marble soccer legs. Sometimes the lovers look at each other and two words pop into their basic heads. Leon Spinks, because his teeth. It's Friday. Sometimes from a passing car, Black Dog or the Steve Miller Band or on the way to luau night at the church gym, K through 8 chicken dance, Mariologists all around down the broken step past the third grade teacher in his actual neck brace. In a room behind the pizza ovens and the white wooden walk-in cooler, the busboy feeds loaf after loaf, quartered loaf of mozzarella to the cheese grinder, bin after bin of cheese in the pure dairy air of love. Down on the avenue, the bands are unloading their black-cased amps and instruments from their open vans in the sunlight of evening that begins the night. Empty tables in the bar, trees over the alley in green twilight. No railings on a wooden flight of steps to the back apartment on the second floor, overlooking garages, under catalpa tree flowers to go up that way and then down. All this pushes an immense longing. I'm going to read 2 more poems. Early Sunday. Guys, I live up the block from the Somerville Market Basket, which is this incredible place. It really is. And I have written about 7 poems about the Market Basket. It was one of my things, like, maybe should I read all the Market Basket poems? But I was like, I'll read all the love poems. I'll read all the poems with the word love. Which I didn't realize I was going to do until I started reading them. I don't believe that word appears in the next 2 poems. Misanthropes can rest easy. Early Sunday. Early Sunday like a rash. We walked through a cloud of pollen and the compact, serious faces of Ecuadorians stacking boxes at the dented Somerville Market Basket, and there was always another thing, another vegetable, more sofrito, a split papaya like a loop. No more Kmart cha-cha on the intercom. Wasn't that my childhood? There was a retired bugler playing Anchors Aweigh at the bright end of a funeral in the old guy's head, so he tapped his hearing aid and smelled like Calvert whiskey. When Sunday hit with May, my Unitarian neighbors were kind green rainbow brothers and sisters at the bus stop for their righteous church, all in denim, invisible bonnets, and shag openness, though sufferers of giganticism were out in the fog all winter with their mallets for clubbing yojimbo in the plate glass windows of the Japanese Baptist Church down on Somerville Avenue, where Market Basket has all the action, tattoos across the tops of breasts and the smalls of backs, dewdrops melted on a shattered windshield. That was the hour when yard sale scavengers were hungover 25-year-olds in downstairs apartment, totally different sorts, but as the hour pushed 1 p.m., they were stumbling in the wake of Baptists and Pentecostals who pushed enormous hulls of virtue into bright green and red dresses and matching bonnets, pinstripe suits, sanctity, husbandry, and dandyism. Underneath all its Sunday clothes, a college town dressed as French maids with body, soul, and these very thin slices of smoked salmon in a sparrow's beak in the garden from a rusted white iron patio set, which was a good place to read Lee Ho. Watching snow peas trellised in the community garden, but did you have to be a snow pea blossom if I saw you? So this is the last poem, and this is another New Jersey poem. One of the interesting things about, any of you are people have funny ideas about New Jersey and South Jersey. It's actually, South Jersey is really beautiful, right? And if you go down to Cape May County, very end there's Wildwood, and the beaches are hugely wide because the sand distributes from north to south. So north the beaches lose, when they have hurricanes and storms, they lose their sand, and the sand reaccumulates at the ends of this island where my family always went. It's 2 miles longer than it was 20 years ago, and it was just crashing surf at the end of it. When I was a kid, I was like a 12-year-old kid, I'd ride my bike there. And now you can walk out, and it's amazing because you see the marsh reasserting itself, the dunes starting up again, and it's a great place. It's a very famous place for birders, like people who love birds, and so there are a lot of great birds down there. You see if you go, interesting things, weird-looking birds. So they're in here. End-to-end another thing, one of the main birds that has come back really in the South Jersey marshes is the osprey, the seahawk, right? And they built all these stands for the osprey. Osprey are really interesting. They hang out in the summer in New Jersey, and then they fly. Then as a family, basically, they raise this, and then they split. They go half the year, in different parts of South America, right? And of course, all of the things like all the wood that they use, I've heard, to build like boardwalks, and so much building. It comes from actually lumber from like the Amazon River area, right, where it should stay. End-to-end New Jersey. Up north, the dead are buried nose to nose, the way cars are parked in the oranges, and the downspouts and metal awnings are edge to edge, Godfather-looking style in the parking of the dead. Down the other tip, the motels are the same way, with the swimming pools lifted up over more parking, welcoming French Canadians to the warm waters, the humid fisheries, artificial palms. Everybody says the Sanderlings run true, but closer they are splayed triangles. You would stay longer with the two kinds of egrets if the bugs would stop biting, and the great blue heron stood out in the middle of the pool like a solitary Yao Ming in an airport. Of course, with all this marsh grass filling the channel in, that is exactly what this is for birds. Meanwhile, the preacher in the freaky boardwalk chapel at the electric piano amid the empty folding chairs, he is probably thinking with quaint categories, or cotton candy, maybe slices of pizza too. I would go odd or even myself at the carny. In the water, people think about the fishes. Empty pools most of the day. You're too early and too late. Absent presences, birders know the pressure of continuous music. Where does the lumber come from? Comes from somewhere. The wood they make outdoor showers out of, and the wood that holds the screens together, and the planks of the porches too. Ask Osprey. I practically walked across the channel to Wildwood, was out as far as the humped toll booth on the 2-lane bridge, under the restoration of the clouds, thanks to regenerative principles, and that you always pay as we go. Thank you so much.
Okay. Tell me about how you get your tongue to keep spend so much time to listen to.
I think that, basically, if you let your it's just a matter of, it's just really kind of the way I'm processing information. You know, I think that one of the things that people do like writing a poem is they have an idea of like a poetry mood. You know, and that like really we have a lot of like complex feeling, like your real feelings about things are all over the place. So that comes in there because, you know, and humor is part of the play. So if you just let me in, it's not really a decision, you know. Well, sorry, I'm not offended. You don't have any questions anymore. Want me to read another one? Read another one.
Did you read another one of the March Basket ones?
You know what? I didn't print that one up. Well, let's see. Here's one about students. I like because I teach in Boston. I'll read two more poems. You don't have to ask me questions. Work in Boston in the Green Line. I like to see people. You know, I didn't learn to drive until I was like in my mid-30s. So I always had to take the subway and the bus and the train and stuff like that. So I'm kind of terrified of driving. No, I'm actually getting better at it. Students sleeping on trains. Outcasts are milky, squirted from udders. Outcasts make the butter, to be large and milky. The best kids in the class are starting to head in that direction. You look around the daylight subway, and ladies are talking to each other just like that. Nobody wants to talk always to so many people. They'll be intrigued by mysteriousness, your Joey qualities. The other men you are wise not to compete with as they struggle with each other. Turn the lights off because anything can happen. Be your own albino rat shape. Fellows sink down with the herd. That's not a crew good at horseshoes. That's a load of earthen jugs, a cargo of spices and oil and wine, heading for the ocean floor. Whale shit, as sailors used to say, of what sinks down farthest, worthlessly. But Ishmael bobs up out of wreckage. With oversized strangeness, you will too. Armored characters look around angry. A plain load of smugglers heading for a crash against the overgrown mountain. It's better to watch the plane take off from the patio, from the faint shade and important business while you attend to your real calling. It will always be poor shoe leather. There's another fun on the Green Line poem. I used to, I was very injury prone as a kid. Cast, you know, spend months and months on crutches and casts. And I used to take a special cab to school with these deaf kids, and they would mess with me in sign language. Raby's poem. Sometimes the deaf city kids get down the Randy Love stairs and flirtations across the train. That's when the vibration is softest. Try passing between deaf thugs when they get up on the balls of their feet and thrust their chests out. It's hard not to get tangled in a fence, a flurry of hand chops and quick moves, insults that sting more deeply by being spoken with the actual bodies of the deaf than with sounds that are invisible. One deaf kid surrenders to the taunts and laughter that was the promise of laughter by drinking a pineapple soda so quickly, it must be said, he killed it. Another tears into a brown bread sandwich with the air of a gored seal. The daredevil would be more plausible deaf than blind. When the train stops for occult reason, time feels like a Jeep just broken down where a government has toppled, and people on the street wonder who's inside with such a worried look. When the train starts moving again, a refugee pulls up black knee socks and adjusts khaki shorts and proceeds to a convenience store in Pennsylvania. And here's my last poem. It's about, I like one of these things for my jobs. I go to graduation every year, which is kind of fun. We have to like put our gowns on, You stood up on the stage. And I've been doing that for like 18 years. So 18 years in a row I've done the graduation, which is really strange. It feels like Groundhog's Day. Graduation poem. And it reminds me of my high school graduation, which was in a place called the Syria Mosque in Pittsburgh. So this is really a Pittsburgh poem. Graduation poem. It's a ruckus in the mezzanine. Chantel, Chantel, Barry, Barry, Dougie, Wanda, Brenda, Dory. The sweat stands out above their thick glasses and rolls down furrowed brows. The kids leaving parry wildly and gesticulate. They take the harps back down from the trees and use them. The light at graduation is somewhat dressier than at normal times. This light is from black marble details at the Syria Mosque and the bow glass fixtures in the auditorium and stairwells. The dark sphinxes out front have golden wigs and temperate paws. You stand in the middle of graduations, you feel the rivers spread their silk. The way some people stop and watch weddings leave the lean downtown churches in white cars, I climb balconies in expectation. The school chorus sings about rainbows and landscapes and ideals. I remember feeling emotional at graduations, with a lingering sense of unseen hips sweating into controlled top stockings, the glitter, the sheen. When the catalpas and horse chestnut trees were in bloom, the honeysuckle vines would take over the wooden fences and hedges, so it was easy to develop sudden but shattering crushes on somebody a few rows away, seen and then disappearing into the mirrored lobbies forever, and good luck to that one. Grandmother's rose and purple and orange crepes and waves that wash this way from other big events, the bat mitzvahs and confirmations and birthdays. It was graduation for plastic combs and afro picks. There were rolling mists from aerosol cans at 5 p.m. in beauty parlors all over the city, and attentive patting of so many hands and textures. And now, pure nothing. The moon and stars out through the crinkling cellophane of white sprays. Graduations are risen like fireflies from grasses in the smoke of backyards and embankments. Thank you so much.